thought my grandson was just playing his usual online games late at night. But when I passed by his door that evening, I heard something that froze me. A woman's voice, soft whispering, coming from his room. But he lives alone with me, and that voice, it said his name. That night I realized something far darker was happening behind that closed door. My name is Margaret, and I live with my grandson, Ethan. He's 16, smart, quiet, and has always been my biggest blessing. After my daughter passed away 3 years ago, Ethan moved in with me. He spends most of his time upstairs in his room, headphones on, gaming with friends, laughing at the screen. At least that's what I thought. I tried not to pry too much. Teenagers need space, right? But lately, something felt off. He'd stay up later than usual, whispering, not laughing. And sometimes I'd find his door locked. One night, curiosity, or maybe fear, got the better of me. And that's when everything changed. It started with little things. I'd knock on his door to tell him dinner was ready. And he'd shout, "Just a sec, Grandma." But when he came down, he'd barely eat. Dark circles under his eyes, trembling hands, and that pale look on his face, like he hadn't slept in days. One afternoon, I went to do laundry. His bed sheets were damp, not with sweat, but something else. They smelled faintly of perfume, a woman's perfume. At first, I thought maybe one of his classmates had come over while I was out, but that didn't make sense. Ethan barely spoke to anyone at school. Then came the whispers. Every night around midnight, I'd hear him talking in his room. His voice would go quiet, and then a soft, almost breathy voice would respond. It wasn't coming from a video game. It sounded too real, too close. One night, I decided to stay up. I turned off all the lights in the house, pretending to sleep, but waited in the hallway outside his room. At exactly 12:17 a.m., I heard it. Ethan. "You promise you won't tell anyone?" Woman's voice. "Of course not. I'm always here for you, Ethan." Her voice was soft, almost like a sigh, but something about it made my stomach twist. It wasn't coming from a phone speaker. It felt in the room. I took a step closer. The floor creaked. Suddenly, everything went silent. Then Ethan's voice, panicked. "Grandma, is that you?" I hurried back to my room, heart pounding. The next morning, he looked different. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He said he didn't sleep. When I asked about the noise, he shrugged it off. "Just a streamer, Grandma. Relax." But later that day, I found something strange. A notebook under his bed. Every page was filled with a name, over and over again. Clara, Clara, Clara. Some words next to it too. "She's waiting. She's almost here." That's when I knew. Something was terribly wrong. Over the next few nights, the whispers grew louder. Sometimes I'd hear giggling. A woman's laugh, echoing faintly through the hall. Once I even thought I saw shadows under his door. 2 sets of feet. I tried to stay calm. Maybe he'd met someone online. Maybe he was in love. But my gut told me otherwise. One evening, I went to bring him tea. When I opened his door, he jumped, slamming his laptop shut. His face was white as a sheet. I noticed the webcam light still glowing. And then, on the reflection of the screen, for a split second, I saw it. A face. A woman's face, staring straight at me. Before the screen went black, I dropped the cup. It shattered on the floor, but Ethan didn't move. He just whispered, "She doesn't like to be interrupted." That night, I couldn't sleep. At around 2 a.m., I heard Ethan's voice again. But this time, he sounded afraid. "Ethan, no, stop. I didn't say that. Please don't." Then silence. I rushed to his room and knocked. No answer. I pushed the door open. The room was freezing cold. His computer was on, camera recording, but Ethan was gone. The woman's voice came from the speakers again. "Don't worry, Grandma. He's with me now." The screen flickered, showing a dark, distorted figure sitting on his bed. I screamed, yanked the plug from the wall, and everything went dark. My hands were shaking. I called the police. They searched the room but found nothing. No trace of anyone else. Ethan's laptop was clean. No chats, no programs, nothing. Just one file left open on his desktop. A folder named Clara. Inside it, a single picture. It was of a woman holding a baby, and behind her was a crib. The same crib my daughter used for Ethan when he was a baby. After that night, Ethan refused to talk about it. He said he didn't remember anything, but I know what I heard. We got help, therapists, doctors. But sometimes I still hear whispers from his room when I pass by, and every time I walk in, his computer screen lights up for just a second, showing her name again, Clara. Last week he asked me a question that sent chills down my spine. He said, "Grandma, did Mom ever have a friend named Clara?" I didn't answer, because I remembered something I'd buried long ago. When my daughter was pregnant with Ethan, she lost her closest friend in a car accident. Her name was Clara, and she was supposed to be Ethan's godmother. I thought that chapter of our lives ended years ago. But maybe some promises never really die. I don't know what or who Clara really was. A ghost, a memory, or something that found its way into Ethan's life through that computer. But I've learned one thing. Never ignore the strange whispers in your home. Sometimes they're warnings, and sometimes they're invitations. If you want to hear what happened next, you'll want to see my next diary story. I thought the nightmare with Clara was over. But weeks later, when I was cleaning the attic, I found something that made my blood run cold. My late daughter's old diary, and on the very first page, in her handwriting, were the words, "If anything happens to me, don't let Clara near Ethan." But Clara was gone long before my daughter ever died. So how could she have written that? For a while after that terrible night, things seemed quiet. Ethan went back to school, started sleeping better, and I thought maybe, just maybe, the whispers had stopped. But I should have known better. Darkness doesn't leave. It just waits for you to feel safe before it returns. That day, I went to the attic to look for old winter clothes. I hadn't been up there since my daughter passed. The air was dusty, the floorboards creaked, and in the corner, under a blanket, I saw a familiar box. Her box, the one she used to keep her memories in. Inside it, right on top, was her diary. I hesitated to open it at first. It felt wrong, like I was intruding on her thoughts, her pain. But something inside me whispered, "You need to know." The diary began years before Ethan was even born. She wrote about her pregnancy, her excitement, her fears, and about her best friend, Clara. They'd known each other since childhood. She called her the sister I never had. But as I kept reading, the tone changed. My daughter started writing about strange things Clara had done. She said Clara had become obsessed. With her, with the baby, with the idea that she and my daughter were somehow connected. Then one page stopped me cold. It read, "Clara said the baby speaks to her in her dreams. She said he calls her Mama." I remember the night my daughter told me Clara had died in a car accident. We both cried, but what she never told me was that it happened right after a terrible argument over Ethan. As I read deeper into the diary, I felt sick. Clara had apparently been showing up at my daughter's home, uninvited. She'd leave gifts for the unborn baby, toys, clothes, even a locket with her picture inside. My daughter wrote that she started having nightmares of Clara standing by Ethan's crib, humming lullabies. She wrote, "Sometimes I wake up at night and hear her voice through the baby monitor. But when I go check, the room is empty. Chatterpage." Her handwriting grew messier, like she was frightened, desperate. Then, the last entry before Clara's death. Clara said she won't leave until he says her name. She said she belongs with him. The next page was blank. I couldn't breathe, because now, all those whispers, the perfume, the voice I'd heard in Ethan's room, they made sense. It wasn't just some ghost or computer glitch. It was her. Clara never left. That night, I burned the diary. I didn't want Ethan to ever read it, but as I watched the pages curl and blacken, a strange smell filled the room. Sweet, like roses, the same scent I'd smelled on Ethan's bedsheets. Then from upstairs, I heard it again. A whisper, soft, melodic, almost gentle. "Why did you burn her words, Margaret?" My blood ran cold. It was coming from Ethan's room. When I opened his door, he was sitting at his desk, staring at his blank screen, but the reflection on the monitor, it wasn't his face. It was Clara's. She smiled. "Don't worry, Grandma," she said through the speakers, her voice echoing like wind. "I promised your daughter I'd take care of him." The lights flickered and Ethan screamed. I grabbed him, unplugged everything, and held him tight as he cried. But when I looked back at the screen, one message was still glowing faintly in white text. "You can't delete me." I called a priest. I called everyone I could think of. No one believed me. For a few nights, the house stayed silent again. Then, one evening, while Ethan was asleep, I went to check on him. He looked peaceful for once, but something shiny on his bedside table caught my eye. It was the same locket from the diary, Clara's picture still inside, and beneath it, a note written in Ethan's handwriting. It said, "Don't worry, Grandma. She said I'll see Mom soon." My heart dropped. I shook him awake, tears streaming down my face. But he didn't stir at first. When he finally opened his eyes, they weren't his eyes anymore. They were distant, cold, and his voice wasn't his. "She misses you too, Grandma," he whispered. Then he smiled. The lights in the room flickered again, and for a moment, standing behind him, I saw her, Clara, her hand on his shoulder looking right at me. The next morning, I called for help. Ethan was taken to stay with specialists. They said it might be trauma, dissociation, stress, but I know better. This isn't something science can explain. Before he left, I went into his room one last time. His computer was gone, his bed empty, but carved into the wooden desk, faintly, were 3 words. "She's not done." Now every night the house feels colder. Sometimes I still hear faint humming from the attic. The same lullaby Clara used to sing in the diary, and every time I close my eyes I see her, holding my daughter's hand, standing in the shadows, waiting. Some promises cross the line between life and death, and some souls can't let go, especially when they think they still have a role to play. I don't know if Clara ever meant harm, but whatever she wanted, she's still here, watching. If you think this story ended here, you're wrong. Watch the next diary entry to see what I found in the attic last night. After Ethan was taken away for treatment, I thought the house would finally be quiet again. But on the 3rd night alone, I heard the music box, the same tune my daughter used to play for Ethan when he was a baby, coming from the attic. I went up there to end it all, to burn whatever was left of Clara. But what I found inside my daughter's old crib made my heart stop. The house feels emptier now. Ethan's laughter, his footsteps, gone. Just silence, and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. I'd promised myself I wouldn't go back to that attic, but every night around 2 a.m., I'd hear that soft lullaby again. Faint, distant, as if someone was winding up a toy. At first I ignored it, but then I realized I'd buried that music box with my daughter years ago. So how could it still be playing? I knew what I had to do. I grabbed a flashlight, my rosary, and went upstairs. If this was Clara's doing, it was time to finish what she started. The attic door groaned when I opened it. Cold air rushed out, sharp and heavy, like stepping into another world. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight. Everything was just as I'd left it after finding the diary. The broken trunk, old photo albums, the faded crib my daughter used for Ethan. But in the corner, something was glowing. It was the locket, Clara's locket, the one I burned with the diary. Yet here it was, untouched, its silver shining faintly. My heart raced. When I picked it up, it was warm, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. And from somewhere inside the attic, that lullaby began to play again. Louder this time. I followed the sound to the crib. It was empty, except for one thing. A folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. I unfolded it carefully. It was my daughter's handwriting again. If you're reading this, it means she's still here. Don't let her take him. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. How long had my daughter known? How long had she fought to protect Ethan from something I couldn't see? I searched the crib more closely and found another item tucked beneath the mattress. A small wooden box, carved with initials, C and A. Clara and Anna, my daughter's names. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to my daughter, all written in Clara's hand. They dated back years, even after Clara's supposed death. Each one began the same way. My dear Anna, I'm so close now. Soon we'll be together again. You, me, and the baby. As I read, I realized these weren't mailed letters. They were never sent. They had been left here one by one, as if Clara was visiting long after she died. One letter mentioned Ethan by name. He looks just like I imagined. I can hear him when I sleep. He says he misses me too. That's when I heard it again. A faint whisper, right behind me. Do you finally understand now, Margaret? I froze. The attic light flickered. In the mirror across the room, I saw her, Clara. Her reflection was clearer this time. Pale, beautiful, with that same sorrowful smile. But her eyes were hollow. She wasn't angry. She looked almost pleading. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice shaking. What do you want from my grandson? She tilted her head slowly. You mean our grandson? My blood ran cold. I stumbled back, shaking my head. No, that's not possible. Clara's voice softened, but it echoed through the walls. She promised me. When we were little, Anna and I made a pact. If one of us ever lost everything, the other would take care of what remained. She didn't mean this, I said, tears welling up. She didn't mean for you to possess him. Clara smiled faintly. You think death breaks promises? It only makes them stronger. The lights went out. The music box stopped. And for a moment there was only silence, before the sound of crying filled the attic. A baby's cry. I dropped the flashlight, my hands trembling. I knew that cry. I'd heard it before. The day Ethan was born. When I turned around, the crib wasn't empty anymore. Inside, wrapped in a faded blanket, was a baby, breathing softly. But when I stepped closer, the blanket fell away. It wasn't a baby. It was Ethan's old toy bear, soaked, heavy, and warm to the touch. And then, a voice whispered right next to my ear. She's coming for him. I ran downstairs, clutching the locket and crying. I didn't know where to go, who to call. But then the phone rang. I hesitated before picking up. Hello? Static. Then Ethan's voice. Grandma? I can't see her anymore. My knees went weak. Ethan, where are you? He sounded confused. They say I've been sleepwalking. But Grandma, she's here. She says she misses you. I shouted for him to hang up, but before the line went dead, I heard her voice again, whispering softly through the phone. Come upstairs, Margaret. It's time. The line went silent. I dropped the phone and ran. The attic door was already open. A dim light spilled down the stairs, and in the glow, I saw a shadow move. I climbed slowly, every step heavier than the last. At the top stood Clara, holding something, or someone. In her arms was Ethan. He looked peaceful, his eyes closed, head resting on her shoulder. Let him go, I cried. But Clara just looked at me. I can't. You couldn't protect Anna. I won't fail him like you did her. I felt the room grow colder. The walls shook, the air thickened, and the attic filled with whispers. Hundreds of voices, overlapping. Anna's, Clara's, Ethan's, all merging into one. Desperate, I reached out and grabbed the locket. It burned in my hand, but I didn't let go. I screamed, You were her friend, Clara. You loved her. Let him live. For a moment, everything stopped. Clara's expression softened. Tears rolled down her face. And then, she whispered, I never meant to hurt him. I just wanted to keep my promise. The attic light burst. A cold wind threw me backward, and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in Ethan's hospital room. He was sitting beside me holding my hand. He looked different. Calm, lighter. He smiled and said, She's gone, Grandma. I wanted to believe him. He said he didn't remember much. Just dreams of a woman singing. The doctors said it was exhaustion, but I knew what I saw. A week later, when we returned home, the house was silent again. No whispers, no lullabies. For the first time in months, it felt normal. Until one morning, I found something on the porch. A box, inside a single white rose and a note. Thank you for keeping your promise. Love, Clara. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer. Maybe finally she was at peace. I learned something through all this. Love doesn't always end with death. Sometimes it lingers, not to harm, but to protect. But when love turns into possession, even angels can become shadows. Wherever Clara is now, I hope she's finally resting. And I hope my daughter can forgive us both for the promises we couldn't keep. If you think that was the end of my story, wait until you hear what happened when I opened that box again. I thought it was over. Clara was gone, Ethan was safe, and the house was finally quiet again. But 3 nights later, I found that same wooden box on my porch. The one I'd buried behind the church myself. Inside, there was a single envelope. My name was written on it, in Clara's handwriting. You know when you think the past has finally let you go? That feeling of peace. The kind that feels too quiet? That's how it was after Clara disappeared. Ethan started smiling again. He helped me cook, even joked around like the boy he used to be. For a moment, I believed everything would be okay. But peace doesn't visit my house for long. That night, as the wind howled through the trees, someone knocked on the door. When I opened it, no one was there. Just the wooden box sitting on the step, dry as bone despite the rain. I recognized it immediately. The same carved initials, C and A. And this time, my hands trembled when I opened it. Inside the box was a white envelope. No rose this time, no perfume. Just that single letter, sealed with wax. It said, To Margaret. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. But curiosity, or maybe love, got the better of me. I broke the seal. The letter began softly, almost kindly. Dear Margaret, I never meant for things to happen this way. I never wanted to hurt Ethan. I only wanted to keep my promise to Anna. You buried me, but I never left. I couldn't. Not until I told you the truth. I frowned. The truth? Hadn't she already said enough? But then I kept reading. Ethan was never just Anna's son. He was ours. My hands went numb. I read it again, thinking I must have misunderstood. When you thought Anna couldn't conceive, she came to me. I was the donor, the bridge. Ethan carries both our blood. The letter slipped from my hands. It fluttered to the floor like a dead leaf. I whispered, no, that's impossible. I sat there in shock. Could that be true? Could my daughter and Clara have done something like that? And if so, what did that mean for Ethan? And for everything that happened? I went straight to my daughter's old chest of drawers. Inside were dozens of medical papers I'd never dared to look at. Fertility reports, treatments, and one folder labeled Confidential Donor Program, 2007. My hands trembled as I flipped through. There it was, Clara's name. She had donated eggs for Anna's treatment. I felt sick. All this time, I'd thought Clara was haunting us out of obsession. But maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love. The room felt colder suddenly, as if someone was standing behind me. Then I heard that same soft whisper again. Now you understand why I couldn't leave? I turned around slowly. She was there, faint, flickering like a reflection in glass. This time she wasn't angry. She looked tired. I had to protect him. Clara said softly, he's all that's left of both of us. And you almost let him slip away. Tears burned my eyes. I didn't know Clara. None of us did. But you can't stay here anymore. He needs peace. He needs life. Clara smiled weakly. I know. That's why I came back. There's one more thing you need to give him. She pointed toward the box. I hesitated, then opened it again. Inside, beneath the letter, was something small, wrapped in cloth. I unfolded it. It was the same silver locket, but cracked now, split into two halves. One half held Clara's picture. The other was empty. Give him this, she said. When he's ready, he'll understand. Her voice began to fade. Tell him I love him. And then she was gone. For the first time, the house was completely still. No whispers, no music box, just silence. The next morning, I took the locket to Ethan's school. He was sitting outside sketching under a tree. When he saw me, he smiled. That same bright smile that reminded me of Anna. I handed him the locket. He turned it over in his hands, confused. What's this? It belonged to your mother, I said quietly. There's more to the story than I ever told you. He looked at the empty side and frowned. Who goes here? For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I whispered, someone who loved you very much. He nodded slowly, as if he already knew. Then he opened his backpack and pulled something out. A drawing. It was of 3 people, me, Anna, and Clara, standing together, holding baby Ethan. I see her in my dreams sometimes, he said softly. She doesn't talk anymore. She just smiles. My throat tightened. She's watching over you now. That's all she ever wanted. He looked up at the sky, eyes shining. I know. Then, out of nowhere, the school bell rang. And in that moment, I swear I smelled roses. Life slowly returned to normal after that. Ethan grew stronger, happier. He even started helping me record my stories for this diary. Sometimes he'd ask questions about his mom, about Clara. And every time I'd tell him the truth. The version that brings peace, not pain. But one night as I sat at my desk writing, something strange happened. The lamp flickered, and my notebook flipped open on its own. On the page, in handwriting that wasn't mine, were 3 words. Thank you, Margaret. I smiled through my tears. Goodbye, Clara, I whispered, and for the first time in a long time, I felt no fear, only love. Sometimes the ones who haunt us aren't trying to hurt us. They're just trying to be remembered. Love doesn't die. It lingers in the air we breathe, in the faces we see, in the lullabies we still hum without knowing why. If you ever feel a gentle whisper when you're alone, don't be afraid. It might just be someone saying goodbye. If you think that was the end of Clara's story, wait until you hear who came knocking the next morning. I thought it was over. Clara was gone. Ethan was safe. The house was quiet again. But the next morning, there was a knock at the door, and when I opened it, a little girl stood there, holding Clara's necklace. She looked up at me and whispered, Are you Margaret? I froze. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Curly brown hair, pale blue eyes, and a face that looked heartbreakingly familiar. The silver locket dangled from her hand, swinging softly like a pendulum. My heart almost stopped. That necklace had been buried with Clara years ago. I'd seen it vanish in her hands when she said goodbye. Who gave you that? I managed to ask. She smiled faintly. She said her name was Clara. I stepped aside, letting the girl in. She was soaked from the rain, shivering a little. Her name, she said, was Lily. She didn't know where her parents were. She just knew she'd been walking for a long time, and that a nice lady with brown hair told her to find me. I sat her down with a towel and hot cocoa, but my mind was spinning. How could Clara contact this girl? Was she haunting someone else now? Or was this child even real? Ethan came downstairs, rubbing his eyes. When he saw Lily, he blinked. Then he whispered, I've seen her before. What do you mean? I asked. He pointed at his sketchbook on the table. On the last page, drawn the night before, was a picture of Lily. "I saw her in my dream," he said. "She said she was coming to see you." I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking on Lily, half expecting her to vanish like Clara had. But she slept soundly, clutching that locket tight against her chest. The next morning, she wandered into the garden chasing butterflies. When the sun hit her hair just right, I could have sworn I saw Clara's reflection in her. Ethan joined her outside, laughing. The kind of laughter that sounded like healing. For a few minutes, everything felt almost normal again, until I noticed something strange. Wherever Lily stepped, the grass seemed greener. The wilted rose bushes Clara had once tended were suddenly blooming again. I knelt beside one, touched its petals, and whispered, "Clara, what did you do?" That night, when I tucked Lily in, she looked at me and said, "She misses you, you know." My throat tightened. "Who does, sweetheart?" "Clara. She said she never left you." "Not really. She said she found a new home." The next few days were peaceful, but in a strange way. Lily seemed to bring warmth wherever she went. Light, laughter, even hope. But with it came something else. At night, I'd hear faint humming in the hallways, the same lullaby Clara used to sing. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks again. But Ethan started hearing it too, Grandma, he said one evening. "Lily talks to someone when she sleeps." I didn't believe him until I heard it myself. Soft whispers through the door. 2 voices, one familiar. I pressed my ear against the wood. One voice was Lily's. The other was Clara's. "You're safe now," Clara whispered. "Stay with her. Protect them both." The next morning, I found Lily drawing something at the kitchen table. It was a picture of 3 figures standing under a tree. Me, Ethan, and her. But behind us, faintly sketched, was Clara, smiling. That evening, it started raining hard again. Thunder shook the windows. And then, just like before, the power went out. The house fell silent except for the faint sound of the music box playing upstairs. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard that tune since the day Clara disappeared. I grabbed a candle and climbed the stairs. The music was coming from the guest room, the one that used to be Clara's. The door was open. Inside, Lily stood by the window, holding the music box. Her eyes were glowing faintly in the candlelight, tears streaming down her face. "She's leaving," Lily said softly. "She said it's time for her to go for real this time." The air grew heavy, electric. I could feel Clara's presence one last time. Gentle, grateful, and fading. A voice whispered behind me, "Thank you for keeping my promise." And then, the candle flickered out. When the light came back, Lily was lying asleep on the bed. The music box quiet, the rain finally stopping. Weeks passed. Lily stayed with us, though no one came looking for her. I filed reports, searched for relatives, but it was as if she had appeared out of nowhere. Ethan called her his little sister now, and in many ways, she felt like a gift Clara had left behind. A second chance at family. One morning, Lily handed me something small, wrapped in a handkerchief. Inside was half of the broken locket, Clara's half. "She said it belongs with you," Lily whispered. I took it in my trembling hands and pressed it to my heart. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not silence, not sadness, just peace. And in the faint distance, through the morning breeze, I heard Clara's voice one last time. "Take care of her like you took care of me." Sometimes love doesn't end with death. Sometimes it finds a way to return. Not as a ghost, but as a heartbeat in someone new. And if you ever feel like you've lost someone forever, look closer. They might just be standing right beside you, wearing their old necklace, smiling with their same eyes. If you think Lily's story ends here, Wait until you hear what Ethan found in her drawings next. Ethan was supposed to be asleep, but when I walked into his room, he was sitting there, pale, holding Lily's sketchbook. He looked at me and whispered, "Grandma, she's been drawing our house. Every night," I frowned. "So what?" He turned the page, and my blood ran cold. Because on the last one, the house was on fire, and we were inside it. I'd convinced myself life was finally normal again. No more voices. No more roses blooming overnight. Just me, Ethan, and Lily. Our strange little family. But peace in this house never stays. It always waits for the perfect moment to crumble. That moment began 3 nights ago, when Ethan came to my room holding that sketchbook. He said Lily had been drawing things in her sleep. I laughed at first. Children dream, children draw. But I should have known better by now. Nothing in this house is ever just a dream. When I opened the sketchbook, the first few pages were innocent enough. Flowers, butterflies, the garden, our faces smiling. But as I flipped further, the drawings changed. The colors grew darker. Lines became jagged, rushed. Then came the house. Our house. Drawn from the outside. Next page, same house, but the windows were red. Next one, flames. And in the last picture, 3 figures. Inside, me, Ethan, Lily. And behind us, drawn faintly in pencil, another shadow, taller, watching from the doorway. I slammed the book shut, heart pounding. Ethan asked, "What does it mean, Grandma?" I didn't have an answer. The next day, I tried to ask Lily about her drawings. She smiled innocently, said she didn't remember making them. "I just draw what I see in my dreams," she said. I forced a laugh. "What kind of dreams, sweetie?" She tilted her head. "The ones she shows me." I froze. "She?" Lily nodded. "Clara. She comes to my room sometimes. She stands near the window. She says she's waiting." That night, I locked all the windows and double-checked the doors. But around 2 a.m., I heard the faint sound of humming again. The same lullaby. Clara's. When I peeked into Lily's room, the window was wide open. Curtains fluttering. Cold wind everywhere. Lily was sitting on the bed, eyes open, whispering softly. "She's here." I called out, "Clara, please, whatever you want. Leave the children out of this." For a moment, the air went still. Then Lily's voice changed, lower, older. "She's not trying to hurt you, Margaret. She's trying to warn you." I stepped closer, trembling. "Warn me about what?" Lily blinked, and when she opened her eyes again, they were her own. She yawned, confused. "Grandma? Why are you crying?" The next morning, the drawings were gone. Every single page torn out of her sketchbook. Ethan swore he didn't touch them. Lily said she didn't either. I found the ripped pages later that evening, burning slowly in the fireplace. No one had lit it. That night, the house began to change. The walls creaked like whispers. Pictures fell from hooks. The scent of roses, faint, suffocating, filled every room. Ethan started having nightmares again. He'd wake screaming that the fire was coming. I sat by his bed, holding his hand, whispering, "It's okay, my love. Nothing's coming." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The next day, we went into the attic, a place I hadn't touched in years. Maybe answers were there. Among the dust and old boxes, I found something strange. An old trunk labeled A and C, adoption records. Inside were papers, dated years before Ethan's birth. You think you've buried your past until it starts calling your name again. I thought Clara's spirit was gone. I thought Lily was a blessing. But when I opened that box in the attic, I realized Clara never left. And Lily was never sent to me by accident. The attic smelled like old wood and dust. The kind of smell that clings to memories you never wanted to revisit. Ethan stood beside me, flashlight trembling in his hand. "What is this stuff, Grandma?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, because inside that trunk were things that should have stayed buried. Old adoption papers, birth certificates, and one photograph that made my heart stop. Anna, Clara, and a baby girl I'd never seen before. The back of the photo said, "Lily, our promise." My knees nearly gave out. I sat there on the cold attic floor, the photo shaking in my hand. It didn't make sense. Lily was barely 8 years old. This picture was dated 20 years ago. Ethan leaned over my shoulder. "Grandma, is that Lily?" I nodded slowly. "She can't be." He whispered, "That's impossible." But nothing in this house has been possible for a long time. I dug through the rest of the trunk. Underneath the papers was a sealed envelope. The same wax seal Clara used. The same symbol carved into her music box. I broke the seal. Inside was a single page. "If you're reading this, Margaret, then Lily has found you. Don't be afraid. She's not from the past. She's from the promise." I didn't understand at first. Promise? What promise? But as I read on, Clara's handwriting became desperate, almost pleading. Anna and I made a vow when Ethan was born. If anything ever happened to us, he would never be alone. We'd send someone to guide him, protect him, until he found peace. Then the next lines were smeared, like she'd been crying while writing them. The ritual wasn't meant to last. But love is a powerful anchor. Too powerful. My hands shook as I lowered the letter. "Ritual," Ethan whispered. "Grandma, what does that mean?" I didn't know how to tell him, so I just said, "It means Clara never really left." That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph again. Anna and Clara, holding baby Lily, smiling like they'd done something divine. At 3:07 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft, small ones. I opened my door quietly, and there she was. Lily, standing at the top of the stairs, clutching her locket. "Lily," I whispered. She turned slowly, eyes wide and glassy. "She said you found it," Lily murmured. "Now you know why I came." "Who told you to come here, sweetheart?" Lily smiled faintly. "Mommy did. But not the one you think." My chest tightened. "Clara?" She nodded. "She said you'd understand when you saw the picture. She said you'd remember the night you made the promise." I froze. That night, Anna was still alive. Clara had come to me crying, holding a candle and a lock of Ethan's baby hair. She said, "We're sealing his future, Margaret, so he's never alone." I thought it was a harmless ritual, a mother's superstition. But now, "Lily," I said slowly, "what are you?" She looked at me, and for a second her face flickered. Half of it still hers, half of it Clara's. I stumbled backward, whispering, "No, no, no." Lily stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't ask to be here," she said softly. "She made me. But I'm not supposed to stay." The promise is breaking. The walls groaned. The windows began to rattle. The scent of roses, stronger than ever, filled the air. Ethan ran up the stairs. "Grandma, what's happening?" Lily turned to him, reaching out a trembling hand. "I have to go now," she whispered. "But you'll see her again, when it's your time." "No," Ethan shouted. "You're real. You're my sister." She smiled sadly. I was her love, not her blood. Then the light above us flickered and shattered. The entire house shook. I grabbed Ethan, pulling him close. Lily stood in the middle of the hall, her hair floating like she was underwater. "Tell her I kept the promise," she said. And then, just like Clara once did, she vanished. The music box started playing downstairs, soft, slow, fading. When I went downstairs later, the box was sitting on the table again, but this time it was closed. For good. I tried to open it. It wouldn't budge. The carvings had changed too. They no longer said C and A. Now they read C-A-L. The promise kept. I cried then. Not from fear, not from loss, but from relief. Because after all these years, I finally understood. Clara and Anna had created Lily as their guardian, a being born out of love, stitched between worlds. And now that Ethan was safe, that love could finally rest. I looked out the window. The roses were blooming again, brighter than ever. And in their petals, I swear I saw 3 figures standing together in the morning light. Anna, Clara, Lily, smiling, watching over us. Love can haunt, heal, and even rewrite the boundaries between worlds. We think ghosts come from death, but sometimes they're born from promises we never had the courage to break. If someone you love still visits your dreams, maybe they're not haunting you. Maybe they're just keeping their promise. If you think that was the end of Clara's story, wait until you see what Ethan found inside the music box the next morning. I thought I'd finally left it all behind. The voices, the shadows, the fear that lingered in every breath I took. But as I'm writing this tonight, I can feel it again. That quiet presence watching me. It's been 3 months since the night Ethan and I walked out of that cursed house. 3 months since the storm took everything. And yet, somehow, the nightmare refuses to die. At first, life seemed normal. Ethan started school again. He laughed. He made friends. I began gardening, cooking, and praying that the darkness was just a scar, not a wound that still bled. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One night, as I was cleaning the kitchen, I heard Ethan whispering again. Not loud, not playful, just quiet murmurs like someone answering him. My heart skipped. I tiptoed toward his room. His door was half open. He sat on the floor, his back to me, staring into the old gaming console I thought I'd thrown away months ago. I froze. That console had burned in the fire. I saw it with my own eyes. "Ethan," I whispered. He didn't turn. Instead, a soft, familiar voice came from the screen. A woman's voice. "You promised you wouldn't leave me, Ethan." I felt my throat tighten. It was Clara. I rushed into the room and pulled Ethan away. The screen flickered. Static. Light. Then her face appeared. Not ghostly, not demonic, but human. Gentle. Almost sad. "Mom," Ethan said, tears filling his eyes. She smiled faintly. "I just wanted to see you one last time, sweetheart." I dropped to my knees. "Clara, please, let him go." The room began to vibrate, the air thick with static and sorrow. The lights dimmed. I could feel her pain, that unbearable longing no mother should endure. "I never wanted to hurt him, Mom. I just didn't know how to let go." Her voice broke. The image on the screen shimmered, and I saw something. Her holding Ethan as a baby, singing to him, the same lullaby she used to hum before bed. Ethan reached out to the screen. "Mom, it's okay. You can rest now." The static grew louder, brighter, and then, with one final whisper, she said, "Take care of him for me." The console shut off. Silence filled the room. I didn't sleep that night. I just held Ethan close, afraid that if I blinked, she'd come back again. But the next morning, something felt different. Lighter. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. Ethan woke up smiling for the first time in months. He said he dreamt of his mom, and that she looked happy, peaceful. I wanted to believe it was over. And for a while, it was. Weeks passed. One rainy afternoon, I was folding clothes in the bedroom when I heard a knock at the door. 3 slow, steady knocks. I froze. Ethan was at school. No one should have been home. When I opened the door, no one was there. Only an envelope on the floor. My name was written on it in familiar handwriting. Clara's handwriting. I trembled as I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Ethan, Clara, and me. But this wasn't from any day I remembered. We were in a park, sunlight falling through the trees. All 3 of us smiling. On the back of the photo it said, "Don't forget me, Mom. Love never dies." I sat on the floor and cried until my heart couldn't take it anymore. That night, I placed the photo on my bedside table. Before sleeping, I whispered, "I'll never forget you, Clara. I promise." As I closed my eyes, a faint breeze brushed across my face. And then I heard it. That same gentle whisper, soft and warm. But this time, not from the shadows. Thank you, Mom. I smiled through my tears. The air felt peaceful again. For the first time in so long, I knew she was free. It's strange how grief can twist love into something haunting. How the ones we lose sometimes cling to us because they're afraid we'll forget them. But love isn't meant to be trapped between worlds. If you ever feel that whisper in the dark, that presence behind you that feels too familiar, don't be afraid. It might not be something evil. It might just be someone who loved you too much to say goodbye. Because sometimes, love doesn't fade. It just finds a quieter way to stay. Watch my next story. It starts with another whisper. But this time, it wasn't from my family. I never thought I'd write another entry after Clara's spirit finally found peace. I told myself the haunting was over. The house was quiet. Ethan was happy again. I was learning how to breathe without looking over my shoulder. But peace is strange. It can feel like silence, or it can feel like waiting. And lately, I've started to feel watched again. Last night, the wind howled the same way it did on the night everything began. The night I heard that whisper in Ethan's room. The rain hit the windows hard, and thunder shook the walls. I was alone. Ethan was spending the weekend at a friend's. I lit a candle by the window and sat down with an old photo album. One I hadn't opened in years. Pictures of my husband, George, smiled up at me. Him in his uniform, his messy handwriting on the back. For my Rose, till my last breath. He died almost 20 years ago. Heart attack, they said. But as I turned the pages, something slipped out. A folded, half-burned envelope, wedged between the photos. My name was on it. I unfolded it carefully. The edges were blackened, ashes clinging to my fingers. The letter was in George's handwriting. My hands shook as I began to read. Rose, if you find this, it means I failed to protect you from what's inside the walls. Don't let them talk to Ethan. Don't let them near his bloodline. They'll try to come through him. Like they tried with Clara. I stopped breathing. If you ever hear whispers, don't answer them. They remember you, Rose. They never forget a promise. The candle flickered. My heart pounded in my chest. The air suddenly felt thick, like someone was standing right behind me. Then I smelled it. Smoke. The same faint burning smell that filled our house the night George died. I grabbed the flashlight and went downstairs. The smell was stronger near the basement. A room I hadn't entered since we moved back. The door was locked, but the key still hung by the shelf. When I opened it, cold air rushed past me. The light flickered against the old stone walls, and I saw something carved into the cement near the floor. A symbol. The same one I'd seen once before, burned into the gaming console that haunted Ethan. It was a circle with 3 lines cutting through the middle, almost like a seal. In the corner, half covered in dust, was a small chest. I opened it. Inside were more letters, all written by George. They said the house was built over the land of an old church. One read, "The priest who lived here tried to trap something inside these walls, but it never stayed quiet." Another letter said, "I've seen her, Rose. A woman in white. She whispers through the children." My hands trembled. I dropped the papers, because right then from the top of the stairs I heard a soft knock. I froze. My heart raced. It was 3:07 a.m. Knock, 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 slow, steady, familiar. I turned off the flashlight and crept toward the stairs. When I reached the top, I saw it. A shadow through the frosted glass of the front door. It was tall, still. And then a voice whispered through the crack, "Rose, you never told him the truth." I dropped the flashlight. The beam hit the wall, lighting up a framed photo of me, George, and Clara. And for a split second, I swear, his reflection in the glass moved. He smiled, the same way he did the night before he died. When morning came, I convinced myself it was a dream. But the letter, it was still in my hand when I woke up. I decided to dig deeper. I went to the old town hall, searching through property records. The man behind the counter frowned when I gave him my address. That place? Ma'am, it used to be a rectory, back in 1923. The priest went missing. Some say he locked something in the basement before he died. He leaned closer. Strange thing. His name was Father George. I stared at him, my heart turning to ice. George what? I asked. He flipped through the file. Father George Holloway. My husband's name. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his face in the glass. Every reflection felt wrong, almost like it was looking back too long. At 2 a.m., I got up and went to the hallway mirror. My reflection stared back, but behind me, there was someone else. A man. He stood by the doorway, his eyes hollow, his face burned. Rose, he whispered. You were supposed to keep the seal closed, I screamed. The lights flickered. The mirror cracked from corner to corner. And just like that, he vanished. But the voice remained. It's awake now. The next morning, Ethan came home. He was pale, quiet, distant. I tried to hug him, but he didn't look at me. Grandma, he said softly. Did Grandpa have a mark like this? He rolled up his sleeve. And there it was. That same circle with 3 lines burned faintly into his skin. The mark from the console. The mark from the basement. I felt the world collapse around me. The curse hadn't ended with Clara. It had started with George. I've sealed the letters back into the chest and locked it away. But I know it's not enough. Every night, the knocking starts again. Same time, same rhythm. And sometimes I see him in the corner of my room, watching me through the dark. I don't know what he brought into our lives. But whatever it is, it's not done with us yet. Because last night, Ethan whispered in his sleep, not his voice, a man's, and he said, I'm home. Watch all part. Ethan's eyes weren't his anymore. To see what happens when the whisper becomes a voice that speaks through him. He was sitting at the kitchen table staring out the window. The light hit his face in a strange way. His eyes darker than before almost. Empty. Good morning, sweetheart, I said gently, sliding a plate of toast in front of him. He didn't answer. He just tilted his head, slowly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, in a voice that wasn't his, he said, You shouldn't have read the letters. Grandma. My heart stopped. His tone, deep, calm, too old for his age. It sent chills crawling up my spine. When he finally looked at me, I saw it. His pupils were faintly glowing, a flicker of red, like an ember hidden under ash. Ethan, I whispered. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the same crooked half smile George used to give me when he was keeping secrets. He says hello. The plate shattered in my hand. I stumbled back, clutching the table for balance. Who? I managed to ask. He leaned forward, eyes unblinking. Grandpa. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window watching Ethan from the hallway as he played with the console. Again. The same one I burned. Somehow, it was back on his desk, working, whispering. I could hear faint voices coming from it, mixed with static. A man's voice repeating the same phrase. The seal must stay open. Every few minutes, Ethan would nod, like he was answering it. I wanted to run, but I couldn't leave him alone. Instead, I whispered a prayer. But the second I said Amen, Ethan turned toward me. Though I swear I hadn't made a sound. He doesn't like that, he said softly. The next morning, I went to the cemetery. I needed answers, and I needed to see his grave. George Holloway, born 1944, died 2003. I stood there in the cold wind, whispering, What did you do to us? And then, the ground trembled. A low rumbling sound came from beneath the grave. For a second, I thought it was my imagination, until I saw the dirt move. Tiny cracks formed around the headstone, spreading like veins, and in the faintest whisper, I heard, You shouldn't have looked. That night, I locked every door and window, but the mirror in the hallway the one that cracked when I saw him last, was whole again. No crack, no damage, just smooth glass. I should have walked away, but something in me wanted to know. So, I whispered, "George, if you're here, show yourself." The reflection behind me flickered, and there he was. Not burned this time, not angry, calm, but wrong. His eyes glowed faintly, just like Ethan's. "It's not me, Rose," he said. "It never was." Then his reflection smiled wider, too wide, and whispered, "It's awake now, and it's wearing his face." I ran to Ethan's room. He was sitting on his bed, humming the same lullaby Clara used to sing, only slower, broken, almost distorted. His hands were covered in ink. No, not ink. Symbols. The same circle with 3 lines, drawn again and again on his skin, his wall, his bedsheet. When I tried to wipe one away, it burned my hand. "Grandma," he said without looking up. "He says you can't stop it this time," I shouted. "Stop what?" He finally looked up and his voice dropped to a whisper. "The door." For days, strange things started happening. The lights flickered at 3:07 a.m. The basement door kept unlocking by itself. And every night, Ethan stood in front of it, whispering to the dark. I asked him once what he was saying. He said, "I'm helping him finish what he started." Then he smiled. I decided to call Father Raymond, the priest from the next town. I didn't care if people thought I was losing my mind. When he arrived, he walked into Ethan's room and froze. He turned pale, his lips trembling. "Mrs. Holloway, this symbol. This isn't a spirit. It's an invitation." I asked what he meant. "It's not trying to possess him. It's trying to become him." That night, everything burned again. The candles I'd lit for prayer burst into tall, violent flames. The house shook. The whispers turned into screams. Ethan stood in the middle of his room, eyes glowing, hands raised toward the ceiling. I screamed his name. "Ethan, please." But he didn't answer. Then through his lips, another voice spoke. "He opened the door, Rose. Now I'm here." Every window shattered. The fire roared. And right there, for one terrifying second, I saw them both, George and the thing wearing his face, standing behind Ethan, their hands on his shoulders. The bloodline will remember. I grabbed Ethan, pulled him out, and ran. When the fire was finally out, nothing was left. The house, the letters, the mirror, all gone. Only the chest from the basement survived. The metal burned, melted but still sealed. Ethan hasn't spoken since. He stares at walls, hums that lullaby, and sometimes in the dark whispers, "He's almost done." I don't know where we'll go next, but I know this isn't over, because last night, as I packed our bags, I found something new inside my drawer. Something that wasn't there before. A note, written in George's handwriting. "You can't run from blood, Rose." And beneath it, a single word, written in red. "Continue. Watch all part. The Bloodline Ritual." To see what happens when Grandma discovers what George was trying to finish, and why Ethan was chosen. It's been 7 days since the fire. 7 long sleepless nights where the air feels too still, too aware. The police said it was faulty wiring. The neighbors said it was a curse. But deep down, I know the truth. It wasn't the house that burned. It was the seal, and whatever George was trying to contain. It's free now. I keep staring at that note I found in the drawer. The one written in George's handwriting, 20 years after his death. "You can't run from blood, Rose." Every time I touch it, the ink feels wet, like it was written moments ago. I tried throwing it in the fire pit behind the motel, but it wouldn't burn. The flames curled around it, and the letters glowed brighter, as if the fire fed it. And then for just a second, I heard a faint voice whisper through the smoke. "Finish it for me." Ethan hasn't spoken a word since that night. Not one. He sits by the motel window every evening, humming that tune again, the same lullaby Clara used to sing. I thought he was lost inside himself, traumatized. But sometimes when I pass by the window, I see him writing in the condensation. Circles, lines, the same mark, and sometimes he writes words backward, like messages meant for something on the other side. Yesterday morning I caught him whispering again. 3 drops, 3 words, 3 generations. I asked him what it meant. He looked at me, almost pitying, and said quietly, "You're the last one, Grandma." I went back to where it all began, the ruins of St. Holloway Chapel, the church George once wrote about in his letters. The building was barely standing, vines crawling over its broken stone walls. Inside, the altar was cracked in half, and the air was heavy with dust and rot. But right in the center of the floor was a familiar mark, the same circle, the same 3 lines, carved deep into the stone, filled with black wax. I knelt beside it and ran my fingers over the grooves. The ground was warm. Then, a voice behind me said, "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Holloway." I turned. It was Father Raymond. His face looked tired, older than before. He said, "Your husband tried to close this mark with his own blood, but it wasn't meant for him. It was meant for someone born in your line." My throat went dry. "Someone like Ethan?" He nodded. "Or you." He told me the story, the one that never made it into the records. Long ago, a priest in this very chapel tried to trap something ancient. A shadow that could live inside blood, feeding on memory, grief, and guilt. He sealed it with a ritual that required 3 generations. The one who opened it, the one who carried it, and the one who would end it. George was the first, Clara was the second, and I am the third. The curse didn't just haunt us. It was us. Father Raymond said there was only one way to end it, to perform the final part of the Bloodline Ritual. But it came with a price. One life must be offered to seal the mark forever. I felt the world tilt beneath me. "Whose?" I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't answer. He only looked toward Ethan. That night, we went back to the ruins. I brought Ethan, though he didn't say a word. His hand was cold, but he didn't resist. Father Raymond placed 3 candles in a triangle around the mark. He cut his palm and let 3 drops of blood fall into the circle. The air turned heavy, pulsing with a strange hum. He whispered, "When the shadow comes, it'll take the form of someone you love most. You must not speak to it." But as the candles flickered, the shadow rose, black smoke twisting into the shape of George. "Rose," it said softly. "It's really me this time." The voice was so human, so real. I almost believed it. Almost. The wind howled. The candles went out. Father Raymond shouted, "Finish it!" and pressed a blade into my hand. Ethan stood still, watching, his eyes glowing faintly again. The mark on his arm pulsed like it was alive. 3 drops, 3 words, 3 generations. The words echoed again, from Ethan's lips, from the walls, from inside me. I fell to my knees, crying, "I can't lose him too!" But the shadow smiled through George's face. "If you don't, you'll lose everyone." I pressed the blade to my palm, letting my blood fall into the mark. The ground shuddered, the wax hissed, and the shadow screamed. It lunged at Ethan, but I stepped in front of him. The moment it touched me, pain shot through every vein in my body. I saw memories flash like fire. George, Clara, Ethan, all trapped, all bound by this curse. And then, I understood. The ritual wasn't about killing. It was about carrying. Someone had to take the shadow willingly. So I whispered, "Take me instead." And the world went silent. When I opened my eyes, the church was gone. Just ashes and dawn. Ethan lay beside me, breathing softly. The mark on his arm was gone. Father Raymond was nowhere to be found. Only the circle remained, carved into my palm, glowing faintly like a heartbeat. I felt Calm. Heavy, but calm. For the first time in years, there were no whispers, no voices, just quiet. But I knew it wasn't over, because when Ethan woke up and saw me, he smiled and said, "You did it, Grandma." Then his voice changed. Deeper, older. "Now rest." And I realized it wasn't Ethan who spoke. I'm writing this last page because I don't know how much time I have left before it takes me completely. The curse is sealed, but it's inside me now, watching, waiting. If anyone ever finds this diary, don't open the last page. Don't speak the words written there. Some things aren't meant to be finished, because in our family, the end is just another beginning. Now watch part 12, the diary that wrote itself, to see what happens after Grandma's spirit begins writing new entries, even after she's gone. It's been 3 months since the fire at St. Holloway Chapel. The police closed the case, calling it an accidental collapse. No bodies were found. Not Grandma's, not Father Raymond's. Only one thing survived the ashes, her diary. It was sitting neatly on the altar when I went back, untouched, unburned, just waiting for me. Ethan's account. When I opened the diary, the first thing I noticed was the ink. It wasn't black anymore. It shimmered, dark red, like it was alive. And the strangest part? The handwriting wasn't fading like normal ink does. It was spreading. Each morning, new words appeared, written in Grandma's exact handwriting. The first one said, "Ethan, don't be afraid." The second, "I'm still here." At first, I thought I was imagining things. Grief, exhaustion, trauma. But then I saw it happen. The words moved. Right before my eyes, the letters twisted and rearranged themselves, forming a new sentence. "You need to finish what I started." My hands went cold, because Grandma told me she finished it. I flipped the pages, and they were all blank now, except for one line on the last page. Write 3 words, Ethan. I started hearing it that night. A faint scratching sound, like a pen dragging across paper. When I opened the diary, new words were forming again. The seal is weak. The shadow remembers. Then, a drop of blood appeared on the page. Not mine, but the diary's. It soaked through the paper, spreading slowly in the shape of that same circle mark. I slammed the diary shut, but even through the cover I could hear Grandma's voice whisper, "You can't close what was never opened." I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bag and tried to leave town, but every road I took led me back to the same place, the ruins of the chapel. The moment I stepped inside, my phone started recording on its own. When I played it back later, I didn't hear my footsteps or breathing. I heard her voice. "Ethan, it's time." And then another voice, deeper, older, the same one from the night of the ritual, whispered, "He carries the mark." I looked down at my arm. The symbol was back, faint but glowing red beneath my skin. When I got home, I tried burning the diary again, but instead of burning, it screamed. The sound came from inside the pages. Hundreds of voices crying out all at once. Names, places, memories that weren't mine. Then the flames turned blue, and words appeared in the smoke. One more must write. I dropped the book. The pages flipped on their own, and then stopped on a blank sheet. A pen rolled off the table toward me, and before I realized it, my hand was writing. Not my words, hers. Every night I write. But it's not me. The words pour out faster than I can think. Stories of things that haven't happened yet. People I haven't met. Places I've never been. And they always end the same way. To be continued. Sometimes I see her shadow in the mirror behind me, sitting in her old chair, smiling softly. And every time I stop writing, she whispers, "Keep going, Ethan. You're my hands now." I don't know how long I can keep doing this. The ink stains my fingers permanently. My dreams are filled with whispers. And my reflection doesn't move when I do, but I have to finish. Because tonight the diary wrote something new. In bold, large letters across the middle of the page. The end begins tonight. And under it, in small writing, my own handwriting this time, the diary still writes, then a final whisper in Grandma's voice. If you're reading this, it's already begun. A hand, pale, wrinkled, familiar, turns the diary's last page. We hear the faint sound of a pen scratching. Then a new title slowly appears on the page. Volume 2, The Grandson's Curse.